Welcome back. Continuing in our 5-step outline of the home buying process, we are at step 4, which is a few different things are happening right now. Appraisal, underwriting, title work. So these are all the things that there's this waiting period. So, we usually say it takes 30 to 45 days to buy a house. The first week of that is your option period, and all the stuff with the contract is solidified. And then you have this period of time where you're waiting before closing, which is step 5. So just hold your horses there. So for step 4, basically here's the things that are happening behind the scenes. The lender is sending out an appraiser to the property. So an appraisal is different than a home inspection. If you're using FHA or VA financing, then the appraiser is going to have a smaller checklist, some parallels to the home inspection, but way less intense. The main purpose of the appraisal is to make sure the home appraises for at least the purchase price or greater. So the way they do that is they're going to look at recent comparable sales in the area, usually 6 months, which in a half-mile radius, and sometimes there's reasons for them to consider other comparable sales too, but that's generally what they're looking for. So they want to make sure, to protect you, the buyer, also to protect the bank, because the bank's thinking, hey, if these people don't make the payments and we have to foreclose, can we sell this house, or are they overpaying for it? So it protects the bank. It also does protect you, because if the house doesn't appraise, you, the buyer, will not be obligated to proceed with the purchase unless we renegotiate. And the seller also is not obligated to sell for less than their contract price. So if a house does not reach that appraised value, we're at an impasse until we renegotiate. But you, the buyer, are protected. Your earnest money is protected, because part of the stipulation of the contract is the house has to appraise for at least the purchase price. So the appraisal's happening. If you do FHA or VA, they're going to check for some things like peeling paint, cracked windows, functionality, cleanliness, safety is a big thing that they're going to check on. All that stuff, though, way less intense than the actual home inspection, which was in step 3. So we have to make sure the appraisal comes in good. If there's some concerns, we'll talk about those at that time. The other thing that's happening during this time period is underwriting. So you're probably going through underwriting with your lender, which is basically you've provided them all this information to your lender and loan processor, and then it goes through their underwriting system, which is basically where they fact check everything. They check everything. They make sure everything is in line, because they're going to take your loan and they're going to typically sell it on the secondary market, which is where all these mortgage loans are bought. So it has to meet all this criteria, so they're very specific about that. So they may at this time request additional documents from you, supportive documents for the things and the information that you've given them. So it's basically dotting I's, crossing T's, making sure everything is in order, and that's underwriting, and that's the thing that happens before you get to the closing department with your lender. And the third thing that's happening during this time is title work. So the title company where the closing takes place has attorneys doing title research on the property, basically making sure that they can transfer clean and clear title from the previous owner to you. If there's any encumbrances, or if there's any, say the property is somehow tied up in an estate where so-and-so has to sign off on it before it can sell. There's all those things that can make a closing messy. They're looking at ahead of time and making sure they can issue what's called a title policy, which is insurance for the title itself. So that after the closing, if there was ever a problem, someone coming back and saying, hey, this property is actually mine by inheritance, or there's some kind of problem that would hinder your ownership of that property, the title company and the title insurance issuer would then handle that outside of affecting you. So it protects you, and once again, it protects the lender. Lenders always require a title policy to be in place when they're going to give a loan on a property, because they want to make sure that there's nothing that can hinder you and hinder their investment, which is the mortgage loan. So those 3 things are happening. That's kind of what's happening during this waiting time when everyone's wondering, okay, we're done with home inspection, what's next? You should also at this time be making sure you have your insurance lined up. We'll generally have, during the time of the home inspection, caught any issues that might keep the home from insuring, usually the roof, maybe the foundation, those kind of things. So we're past that point. You want to line up your insurance, get that in place, because your lender will need information from your insurance agent so they can get your final numbers and all of that. And as we get a little closer, you'll want to line up utilities to transfer in your name. So those are the things that are happening. Once again, if this were a cash deal, you'd just be dealing with title. You wouldn't necessarily be dealing with an appraiser and underwriting. You could hire your own appraisal, but that's pretty much what is going on during this time period. Step 5 is the last step, which is the closing, so stay tuned. That's actually my favorite part.